When A-10 Warthogs thundered into Clark Air Base, it wasn't just jets landing, it was the US-Philippines alliance in action. This show of force came at a tense moment as nearly 100 Chinese vessels massing near Thitu Island demanded an urgent answer, and the Warthogs' arrival became that message of reassurance and deterrence. Every sortie at Clark wasn't just training, it was proof of real interoperability, sharper deterrence, and a visible signal that Manila is not standing alone. And looking ahead, the deployment marks the Philippines' pivot to external defense, the US refining its Indo-Pacific strategy, and China recalculating its every move. In the big picture, the thunder of the Warthogs over Clark wasn't just noise. It was the sound of an alliance preparing for tomorrow's battle. If you thought our last video on the Balikatan exercises was already intense, wait till you hear this. Just days ago, a fleet of US A-10 Warthog attack jets thundered into Clark Air Base in the Philippines. That sound of engines ripping the skies, that wasn't just aircraft landing. It was history touching down right here in Luzon, and the timing could not be more dramatic. Now, why does this matter so much? Because the Philippines and the US are tied not just by friendship, but by ironclad defense deals like the Mutual Defense Treaty and the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement. These agreements aren't just words on paper, they're living commitments, tested and proven whenever tensions rise in our Indo-Pacific neighborhood. And with nearly 100 Chinese vessels recently swarming near Thitu Island in the West Philippine Sea, the arrival of these A-10s feels like a direct answer to growing pressure in the region. On December 6th, 8 A-10 Thunderbolt IIs from the US 25th Fighter Squadron roared into Clark, joined by 2 A-29B Super Tucano light attack aircraft. For more than a week, Filipino and American crews trained shoulder to shoulder, pilots flying joint missions, ground crews swapping techniques, and everyone sweating together under the tropical sun. One US pilot even joked, "You handle the GIU-8 cannon, I'll handle the paperwork," a reminder that even in the seriousness of war games, human bonds and laughter break the ice. This wasn't just a drill, it was a message. Both nations can move, fight, and operate as one. Strategically, this deployment is part of what the US calls dynamic force employment, a way to be strategically predictable, but operationally unpredictable. Everyone knows the US is committed, but no one knows exactly when, where, or how they'll show up. By making Clark Air Base a hub, and then extending to spoke locations like Palawan's Antonio Bautista Air Base, these jets prove they can operate flexibly from austere fields, dispersing power and staying survivable in a contested environment. But the story doesn't end at Clark. This deployment resonates across the entire Indo-Pacific. It reassures allies that Washington is not just watching but actively reinforcing, while sending a careful warning to adversaries that aggression in the South China Sea won't go unanswered. The A-10s may be iconic for their close air support role, but here they also serve as flying symbols of deterrence, reminding everyone that the Philippines is not alone in safeguarding its territory and people. For Filipino troops, the benefit is tangible. Direct, hands-on exposure to US tactics, coordination, and advanced combat integration. For Americans, it's proof that their partnerships are real and reliable on the ground. So what does this mean for the future? It's both immediate readiness and long-term alliance building. For now, Filipino and American forces are sharper, faster, and more connected than ever. Down the line, this kind of cooperation builds a stronger foundation for more joint drills, shared assets, and deeper trust. And while China might be calculating its next move, every jet that landed at Clark shifted that calculus, if only slightly, toward caution. Okay, listeners, from Manila to Los Angeles, whether you're watching as a proud Filipino, an American ally, or simply someone curious about the shifting tides in our region, this moment is big. Those A-10s aren't just metal machines, they're the embodiment of a promise, a reminder that in times of uncertainty, standing shoulder to shoulder matters most. If that gives you chills, you're not alone. And if you love this breakdown, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and get ready, because in our next video, we'll dig even deeper into what comes next in this fast-evolving regional chess game. Stay tuned, stay proud, and stay curious. When the skies over Pampanga thundered on December 6th, it wasn't just another day at Clark Air Base. It was the unmistakable arrival of the U.S. Air Force's A-10 Thunderbolt IIs, famously known as Warthogs. Reports confirm at least 4 of these rugged, close air support jets touched down, with the Philippine Air Force later noting as many as 8, joined by 2 A-29B Super Tucanos. For over a week, through December 15th, these aircraft became the centerpiece of a joint training exercise that brought American and Filipino crews shoulder to shoulder in one of the most strategically important airfields in Asia. Clark isn't just any base, it's a legacy hub, just 40 miles from Metro Manila, and still the perfect launch pad for projecting strength across the contested South China Sea. Leading the charge were the men and women of the U.S. 25th Fighter Squadron, part of the 51st Fighter Wing from Osan Air Base in South Korea, training alongside their Filipino counterparts from the 15th Strike Wing and the 710th Special Operations Wing. Imagine the scene: U.S. pilots and Pinoy pilots swapping tactics, ground crews sharing tricks of the trade, and everyone bonded not only by drills and briefings, but also by laughter and camaraderie under the Luzon sun. This wasn't just about flexing military muscle. It was about showing how two forces can mesh together seamlessly when it matters most. And what exactly did the Philippines get to see up close? The A-10 Warthog is a beast built for one purpose: close air support. Its heart is the fearsome GAU-8A Avenger cannon, a 7-barrel 30mm Gatling gun that spits out nearly 4,000 rounds a minute with that iconic brrr sound. Each Warthog can carry up to 16,000 pounds of firepower, bombs, Mavericks, Sidewinders, rockets, you name it. But what makes it truly legendary is its toughness. With over half a ton of titanium armor wrapped around the cockpit and critical systems, the A-10 can take hits, shrug them off, and keep flying. It was engineered to fight low and slow, where troops on the ground need it most. And it can even operate from rough, unprepared runways, perfect for the Philippines' island geography and forward bases like Palawan. So, when you put the numbers together, 4 to 8 Warthogs, Clark Air Base as the hub, a December 6 to 15 deployment, and Filipino and American units working side by side, you get more than just statistics. You get a living, breathing snapshot of alliance in action. For the U.S., it's about showing strength and unpredictability through dynamic force employment. For the Philippines, it's about gaining experience, credibility, and reassurance that it has a partner ready to stand firm when the seas and skies get contested. And for all of us watching, whether from Manila, Angeles City, or Los Angeles, it's a reminder that these deployments are not just about machines of war, but about people, trust, and a shared promise of security in uncertain times. The question on everyone's mind is simple. Why now? Why did the U.S. suddenly surge A-10 Warthog attack jets into Clark Air Base at this particular moment? The answer lies in a mix of rising tensions, strategic signaling, and years of careful alliance building between Manila and Washington. First, the regional backdrop. In late November 2024, the Philippine military reported that almost 100 Chinese vessels were clustered near Thitu Island, Pag-asa, the largest Chinese maritime swarm recorded there. This wasn't an isolated incident. For months, Philippine and Chinese ships have been clashing in contested waters, from water cannon blasts near Ayungin Shoal to near-collision incidents with Philippine Coast Guard patrols. For Filipinos living on these outposts, the pressure is daily, almost suffocating. For Manila, it's proof that the South China Sea flashpoints are no longer theoretical, they are happening in real time, just miles from Philippine communities. Against that backdrop, the sight of U.S. Warthogs touching down at Clark Air Base felt like a direct answer, an unmistakable message of reassurance and deterrence. The deployment wasn't random. It was part of America's Dynamic Force Employment, DFE, concept, a doctrine designed to keep competitors guessing. Instead of predictable, long-term basing, DFE emphasizes fast, flexible deployments that present layers of operational unpredictability to a competitor's strategic decision-making, as one U.S. Air Force official explained. In plain language, it means allies know the U.S. will show up, but adversaries can't predict when, where, or how. Parking Warthogs at Clark, just 40 miles from Manila and a short flight from the West Philippine Sea, was the perfect embodiment of that doctrine. But there's also the alliance dimension. The U.S.-Philippine defense relationship has been deepening steadily, backed not just by words but by hard figures. Since 2015, Washington has delivered more than 57 billion pesos, $1.14 billion worth of planes, armored vehicles, weapon systems, and training support to the Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP. And the pipeline is still flowing. In mid-2024, the U.S. pledged another $500 million in foreign military financing, the single largest package ever offered to Manila. That money is earmarked for modernizing air bases, improving cyber defenses, and strengthening maritime patrols, all critical to facing China's growing assertiveness in the South China Sea. On the Philippine side, this dovetails with the AFP modernization program, now in its third horizon. Approved in early 2024, Re-Horizon 3 envisions nearly $35 billion defense investments through 2028, covering everything from new fighter jets to coastal defense systems and radar networks. Earlier modernization phases already delivered assets like FA-50 light combat aircraft, Black Hawk helicopters, and long-range radars. With the Warthog's arrival, Filipino troops weren't just spectators, they were active participants, training alongside U.S. crews, sharpening their interoperability, and gaining direct exposure to cutting-edge tactics. Put together, the why now becomes clear. The nearly 100 Chinese ships massing near Thitu in November created an immediate sense of urgency. The U.S. answered that with a deployment meant to project both reassurance and unpredictability. The Philippine military's modernization goals provided the perfect framework to host and benefit from that deployment. And the billions of pesos and dollars in military assistance and upgrades gave it substance beyond symbolism. In short, the Warthog deployment is more than a headline. It's the intersection of a real threat, a tested alliance, and a shared strategy. For Filipinos watching from Pag-asa to Manila, it's a reminder that they are not standing alone. For Americans, it's proof that their oldest treaty ally in Asia is not just a partner in name, but in action.
And for everyone in the Indo-Pacific, it's a signal. When tensions spike, the U.S.-Philippines partnership can and will put boots on the ground and jets in the sky, ready to meet the challenge. When the U.S. A-10 Warthogs landed at Clark Air Base, the first impact was felt right on the tarmac. Military interoperability moved from paper agreements into live reality. Filipino and American pilots flew sorties together, ground crews swapped best practices, and maintenance teams worked shoulder to shoulder in the humid Pampanga heat. For the Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, this wasn't just exposure to new aircraft, it was integration into a system of joint command and control, communications, and real-world tactical execution. For the U.S., it meant sharpening coordination with one of its most important treaty allies in Asia. Every shared drill, whether simulating close air support, scrambling jets from austere runways, or conducting emergency maintenance, makes both militaries more ready to operate as one fighting force should deterrence fail. That deterrence, in fact, is one of the most visible effects of the deployment. A-10 Warthogs are iconic machines. Rugged, slow but lethal, with their 30mm GAU-8A Avenger cannon producing the famous BRRT sound feared across battlefields. Seeing them parked in Clark, just a short flight away from contested waters, was itself a powerful message. As analysts note, presence is deterrence. The fact that the U.S. can surge close air support assets within days to the Philippines shows not just capability but credibility, telling any would-be aggressor that escalation in the West Philippine Sea will not go unanswered. It is reassurance for Filipinos and a warning for China. The geopolitical impact is even broader. As one U.S. Air Force official emphasized, exercises like this are designed to present layers of operational unpredictability to a competitor's strategic decision-making. That phrase isn't bureaucratic fluff. It's the heart of the dynamic force employment, DFE strategy. By deploying A-10s unpredictably, 1 week in Clark, the next in Palawan, another time in Guam, the U.S. keeps adversaries off balance. Political analysts have been clear. This isn't just about flying planes. It's about demonstrating that alliances in Asia are alive, flexible, and operational. The Atlantic Council observed that deployments like these send a message to China that its efforts to bully the Philippines will not be tolerated. In short, each Warthog sortie isn't only a training drill, it's also a diplomatic signal written in jet fuel and titanium armor. The deployment also serves as a case study in alliance building. Over the past decade, Washington has poured significant resources into supporting Philippine defense modernization. Since 2015, the U.S. has delivered more than 57 billion pesos, $1.14 billion, in aircraft, armored vehicles, and training. Just last year, Washington announced an additional $500 million in military financing, the largest single package in Philippine history, aimed at shoring up bases, maritime patrol capabilities, and cyber defense. Manila, for its part, has committed nearly $35 billion under Horizon 3 of the AFP modernization program, with plans for new fighters, radars, and coastal defense systems through 2028. When A-10s landed in Clark, they were plugging directly into this modernization trajectory, proof that Philippine defense is no longer just about catching up, but about integration with the world's most advanced military. On the public and domestic front, the effects are layered. Recent surveys show that 73% of Filipinos support stronger defense action, even military action, against Chinese aggression in the West Philippine Sea. Broader studies also find that over 80% of Filipinos trust the U.S. more than any other country, reflecting deep cultural and historical ties. For many ordinary Filipinos, seeing U.S. jets at Clark is a reassurance, proof that their concerns in Pagasa, Palawan, and Zambales are not being ignored. Yet not all voices are aligned. Civil society groups and nationalists have raised concerns that hosting U.S. assets risks eroding Philippine sovereignty or dragging the country into Washington's rivalries. Some worry that deepening military ties could escalate rather than de-escalate tensions. This debate is part of a broader conversation about the Philippines' role in a multipolar world, balancing the need for strong defense with the fear of becoming a front line in great power conflict. Taken together, the immediate effects and current impact of the A-10 deployment are undeniable. Militarily, it sharpened interoperability and reinforced deterrence. Geopolitically, it reminded the region that alliances matter and that Manila has friends willing to show up in force. Domestically, it sparked pride and reassurance for many, but also renewed the debate over sovereignty and security. In the end, the arrival of the Warthogs at Clark wasn't just about jets on a runway. It was about the Philippines, the U.S., and the Indo-Pacific recalibrating to a new reality where readiness, unpredictability, and partnership define the balance of power. The Warthog deployment may prove to be a turning point in the Philippines' defense story. For decades, the Armed Forces of the Philippines, AFP, has been oriented mainly toward internal security threats, insurgencies, terrorism, and disaster relief. But the arrival of A-10s at Clark represents more than just a drill. It's a signal that Manila is now pivoting toward external and territorial defense. Analysts see this as a logical progression, from fighting rebels in the jungles of Mindanao to preparing for challenges in the open waters of the West Philippine Sea. That pivot is backed by money. The AFP's Horizon 3 modernization program, approved in 2024, sets aside around $35 to $40 billion through 2027 to 2028 for new fighters, radars, missile systems, and naval assets. Earlier phases brought in FA-50 light fighters, Black Hawk helicopters, and long-range coastal radars. Future budgets aim at multi-role fighters, submarines, and missile defense systems. Against that backdrop, training with U.S. A-10s is more than symbolic. It's a stepping stone toward a Philippine military increasingly structured for territorial defense and regional deterrence. The deployment also highlights America's own balancing act. The A-10 itself is nearing the twilight of its career. The U.S. Air Force has plans to retire its remaining 162 Warthogs by fiscal year 2026 to 2027. Critics call it outdated in an era of advanced Chinese and Russian air defenses, where slow, low-flying aircraft may be too vulnerable. But the Warthog's proven ability to loiter for hours, deliver devastating firepower, and even train for maritime missions keeps it relevant. In fact, A-10s have already drilled with U.S. Navy destroyers in the Gulf of Oman and practiced maritime strike profiles in the Pacific. That makes them surprisingly adaptable for missions like coastal patrols, anti-ship strikes with Mavericks or JDAMs, and supporting amphibious landings. Exactly the kinds of scenarios the Philippines may face in the South China Sea. Strategically, though, this deployment is less about the plane and more about the posture. The U.S. vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific depends on partnerships and prepositioned access points. That's where the Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, EDCA, comes in. 5 original sites: Basa Air Base, Fort Magsaysay, Lumbia, Mactan, and Antonio Bautista, plus 4 more added in 2023: Cagayan, Isabela, Palawan's Balabac Island, and Lalo Airport in Cagayan. Now give the U.S. rotational access across the archipelago. These bases extend American reach from Luzon down to Palawan, effectively anchoring the U.S.-Philippines alliance as the geographic centerpiece of its Indo-Pacific strategy. The long-term implications ripple across the region. For China, seeing Warthogs in Clark and potentially in Palawan or Balabac next complicates its calculations. Each deployment forces Beijing to consider that any move against Philippine vessels or outposts could trigger a joint U.S.-Philippines response, not just a solo Philippine reaction. That uncertainty is deterrence in action. For other Southeast Asian claimants, like Vietnam and Malaysia, it demonstrates that Manila is no longer standing alone, but is tied into a stronger security network, which could embolden them to deepen their own defense ties with Washington or each other. Hypothetically, if such deployments become routine, A-10s today, F-35s, or naval missile systems tomorrow, the balance of power in the South China Sea could tilt. China might answer by increasing militia swarms around Philippine-held reefs, boosting its own exercises near contested shoals, or pressuring ASEAN partners economically to resist deeper security integration with the U.S. Conversely, consistent Philippine-U.S. training might pave the way for multilateral patrols with Japan, Australia, or even Vietnam, turning the South China Sea into a more contested but also more balanced space. The arrival of the A-10 Warthogs at Clark Air Base was more than just a high-profile military exercise. It was a vivid demonstration of how the U.S.-Philippines alliance is evolving in real time, moving from the abstract language of treaties into visible, roaring action. From the facts and figures, the number of aircraft deployed, the units involved, and the days of integrated training, to the why now, driven by nearly 100 Chinese vessels massing near Theta Island. The deployment highlights how rising tensions in the South China Sea are reshaping defense priorities. The immediate effects were clear: greater interoperability, sharper deterrence, and a powerful diplomatic message. And the long-term implications point toward a Philippines pivoting to external defense, a U.S. refining its Indo-Pacific strategy through EDK bases, and a region recalibrating its security balance in response. But beyond the statistics and strategy, the deeper meaning lies in what this moment represents. The A-10s on Philippine soil are not just temporary visitors, they are symbols of trust, of shared risks, and of a shared future. This is more than a deployment. It is a long-term investment in a partnership that will help determine whether the Indo-Pacific remains free, open, and stable in the years to come. For Filipinos and Americans alike, the thunder of the Warthogs over Clark is not just noise in the sky. It is the sound of an alliance preparing for the challenges of tomorrow.
If you liked the video, do not forget to like, share, and subscribe our channel for deep analysis of contemporary issues.